Welcome back, Rare Coin Insider. In the world of coin collecting, there are always some pieces that stand out as legends, and one such legend is the 1979 1-cent coin, a coin that looks ordinary to the untrained eye but holds within it a story of immense history, mystery, and unexpected fortune. When people think about old coins, they often imagine dusty drawers, forgotten piggy banks, or boxes in the attic that have been left untouched for decades. But what they don't realize is that some of those very coins, particularly the 1979 1-cent piece, can hold values that stretch far beyond imagination. Now, when we talk about this coin, we are not just talking about copper and metal, we are talking about a symbol of time, a piece of art that has survived through decades, carrying with it the identity of its era, the mark of its mint, and the subtle errors that sometimes make the difference between 1 cent and millions of dollars. The 1979 penny has become a coin that has sparked curiosity, discussions, debates, and dreams among collectors worldwide. Imagine holding something in your hand that was once exchanged for a piece of candy or maybe dropped into a vending machine, and now that same coin can be worth as much as $256 million in the collector's market. It sounds unbelievable, but that's the charm of numismatics, the art and science of collecting coins, because rarity, demand, design, and history all combine to transform the face value into astronomical worth. The 1979 1-cent coin was part of a long tradition of the Lincoln Pennies series, which began in 1909 to honor the centennial birth anniversary of President Abraham Lincoln. By 1979, this coin had already been in circulation for 70 years, but that particular year carried with it unique mintage details, metal compositions, and mint errors that made some examples stand out like glittering gems among pebbles. If we start from the very basics, the coin weighs around 3.11 grams when it is made from copper, which was the standard metal composition until the early 1980s. Later, due to rising copper prices, the United States Mint shifted towards using a copper-plated zinc composition that weighed slightly less, around 2.5 grams, but in 1979 the coins were still the heavier copper pieces. This weight is more than just a technical specification, it is a key to authenticity. Serious collectors often weigh their pennies to ensure they are holding an original copper piece and not a plated counterfeit, and the exact measurement of 3.11 grams has become a kind of secret code among experts. The coin's design is no less important. On the obverse, or the front side, we see the iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner, which had been the face of the penny since 1909. Brenner's initials VDB had stirred controversy in the very beginning of the Lincoln cent series, leading to their removal and later subtle reinstatement, but by 1979 the design had already cemented itself as one of the most recognized faces in American coinage. Lincoln's profile is sharp, detailed, and dignified, symbolizing not just a former president, but the spirit of the nation during its difficult years of division and unity. Above his head, we see the motto, "In God We Trust." To his left the word, "Liberty," and to the right the year 1979, which for collectors is like a passport stamp showing the era of origin. Beneath that date, there may also be a mint mark, which indicates where the coin was struck. No mint mark means it was minted in Philadelphia. A D stands for Denver, and an S stands for San Francisco, where proof coins were produced. These little letters may seem like small details, but they can mean the difference between a coin worth 1 cent and one worth hundreds of thousands, because mintage numbers, quality of striking, and rarity all depend on these factors. Turning the coin around, the reverse features the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 to replace the earlier wheat stalks design. The Lincoln Memorial was designed by Frank Gasparo, and it gave the penny a new sense of grandeur, because if you look closely at the center of the memorial on the coin, you can actually see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside, a detail that requires a magnifying glass to fully appreciate. Above the memorial arch is the words, United States of America. Beneath it the denomination, 1 cent. And above the monument is the motto, E pluribus unum, meaning, out of many, one. This combination of inscriptions, design, and symbolism makes the penny not just a currency but a canvas of national pride and artistic detail. Now, why does the 1979 1-cent coin, something so common, end up being valued in the millions, sometimes even being claimed at $256 million in rare auctions? The answer lies in rarity, condition, and minting anomalies. Most of the 1979 pennies are worth only their face value, or perhaps a few cents more if they are in average circulated condition. But when you enter the world of uncirculated coins, proof coins, and error coins, the story changes dramatically. A pristine 1979 proof coin, for example, with a clear mint mark, can command prices in the thousands. If the mint mark shows doubling, or if there are die errors that resulted in misprints, such coins can skyrocket in value because collectors crave uniqueness. The principle is simple. The fewer there are, the higher the value, and in the numismatic market, collectors are always willing to pay more for something they know is rare and historically significant. Consider for a moment the concept of a double die coin, where during the minting process the die strikes incorrectly, creating a doubling effect on the letters or numbers. For a regular eye, it might look like a smudge or blur, but for an expert, it's like discovering treasure. The 1979 penny has known varieties where such doubling occurs, and those have been sold at jaw-dropping prices in auctions. Then, there are off-center strikes, where the coin was not perfectly aligned in the press, leading to missing edges or partially blank areas. These mistakes are like fingerprints of history, impossible to replicate, and they instantly convert a common cent into a rare gem. But the story doesn't end at errors. Condition matters enormously. A 1979 penny that has been in circulation, scraped, and scratched may never fetch more than a few cents. But a coin that has been preserved in mint state, graded by professional services such as PCGS or NGC, can rise in value exponentially. Grading is a meticulous process where every detail, from the shine of the luster to the sharpness of Lincoln's hair, is examined under magnification. A coin graded MS-67 or MS-68, which means mint state with near perfection, can be so rare that collectors will enter bidding wars, pushing the price into the stratosphere. And this is where the legends are born, stories of coins once ignored, suddenly being valued at millions because their condition was untouched by time. Now you might be wondering, how did this figure of $256 million come into the conversation about a 1979 penny? Well, in the world of coins, sensational stories often circulate about record-breaking sales, and while some are exaggerations, others are grounded in real events where rare coins did indeed fetch astronomical amounts. The idea that a single penny could be worth hundreds of millions may sound like fantasy, but consider the psychology of collecting. For the wealthiest collectors, owning something absolutely unique, something no one else in the world can have, is worth paying any price. Just as paintings by Picasso or Van Gogh are sold for hundreds of millions, coins too can reach those heights when their rarity, historical significance, and demand collide. Some stories suggest that private auctions, where the details are not always public, have seen bids reaching these levels, and the 1979 penny has occasionally been swept into this legend, making it one of the most talked about modern coins in circulation. To understand why coins like this reach such values, you need to enter the mind of the collector. Collectors are not just buyers of metal, they are dreamers, historians, and investors. When they see a 1979 penny with a unique error, they are not just seeing a coin, they are seeing a piece of history that will never exist again. They know that once they own it, they hold something irreplaceable, a conversation piece that will outlast them, a legacy that can be passed down. This emotional value adds layers upon layers to the monetary value, and it is why auctions become fierce battlegrounds where millionaires and billionaires fight to add such treasures to their collections. And yet, for every story of a coin sold for millions, there are thousands of stories of people who had no idea what they were holding. Imagine the grandmother who gave her grandson a jar of pennies to spend at the corner store, not knowing that one of those pennies was worth a house. Imagine the teenager who picked up a penny from the ground in 1979, shrugged, and bought candy, not realizing that had they kept that coin safe, decades later it could have made them a millionaire. This is what makes the world of coins both thrilling and tragic: the missed opportunities, the hidden treasures, the unknown fortunes. The 1979 1-cent coin embodies all of this mystery. It sits quietly in drawers, jars, and pockets, blending in with the rest, waiting for the right pair of eyes to recognize its uniqueness. It is a coin that teaches us to pay attention, to look closely, to appreciate the tiny details that separate the ordinary from the extraordinary. And as we continue to explore its history, its design, its errors, and its place in the collector's market, we begin to understand why something so small, so humble, could become a giant in value, reaching up to $256 million in the mythology of numismatics. When we continue the journey of the 1979 1-cent coin, the more we explore, the more layers of fascination begin to unfold, because what looks like just another small copper disc is actually a passport into an entire world of secrets, mysteries, and record-breaking values. The truth about coins like these is that they are not just minted pieces of currency, they are historical documents, pieces of metal carrying the identity of a nation at a specific moment in time. Every scratch, every shine, every mint mark tells a different story, and for the 1979 penny those stories have been powerful enough to elevate it into the spotlight of collectors across the globe. By the year 1979, the United States Mint was producing billions of pennies annually. In fact, the combined output from Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints crossed over 6 billion that year. That sheer number makes most people think, how can a coin so common ever be rare, let alone worth millions? But here lies the paradox of numismatics. Rarity is not always about how many coins were minted, it is about how many survived in pristine, untouched condition, and more importantly, how many carry unique differences or mint errors that set them apart from the billions. That is why among those billions, a handful of 1979 pennies became legends. The Philadelphia Mint produced coins without a mint mark, which means if you look at a penny from 1979 and see only the date, you're holding one from Philadelphia. The Denver Mint, marked with AD, also struck massive numbers of pennies, while the San Francisco Mint, marked with an S, focused primarily on proof coins. These proof coins were never intended for circulation. They were specially struck for collectors using polished dies and blank planchets, giving them an extraordinary shine and sharp detail. A 1979 S-proof penny can look so perfect under light that it almost seems unreal, like a jewel instead of a coin. Within these proofs, there exist varieties known as Type 1 and Type 2, where the S mint mark differs slightly in its shape and clarity. Type 2, being crisper and rarer, is often the variety that collectors hunt for, and this tiny difference can transform a coin's value from a few dollars to thousands. But when it comes to the most breathtaking stories, it is always the errors that capture attention. Imagine a coin struck with a double die, where the inscriptions appear doubled, creating ghost-like images on the letters and numbers. For the untrained eye, it may look like a mistake, but for the numismatist, it is like finding buried treasure. A 1979 penny with a strong double die can instantly command huge prices at auction, because each error coin is essentially one of a kind, a fingerprint of history that will never repeat itself. Then, there are off-center strikes, sometimes showing only half of Lincoln's portrait or cutting off entire sections of the memorial on the reverse. The more dramatic the error, the higher the value, with collectors sometimes paying thousands or even tens of thousands for a coin where the minting machine slipped just once. Now let us turn to condition. The coin collecting world revolves around grading, and grading is a system that can turn a simple 1-cent coin into a fortune. Professional grading services such as the Professional Coin Grading Service, PCGS, and the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, NGC, carefully examine every detail of a coin under magnification. They rate the coin on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolutely flawless, a state so perfect that it is almost mythical. A 1979 penny found in circulation will usually grade somewhere between 1 and 20, worn, scratched, and tired from decades of use. But a coin that has been preserved, perhaps sealed in a collector's set or tucked away carefully, might achieve grades of MS65, MS66, or even MS67. These high-grade coins, with full original luster and no distracting marks, are incredibly rare. When such coins come to auction, the bidding wars can escalate beyond reason, and this is where values skyrocket. Take for example a 1979 penny graded MS68 red, meaning it has full red copper luster and an almost flawless surface. Such a coin can easily sell for thousands of dollars, because collectors know how improbable it is for a copper coin, so prone to spots and oxidation, to survive for decades in perfect condition. The color designation is also critical. Pennies are categorized as brown, BN, red-brown, RB, or red, RD, depending on how much of their original fiery copper shine remains. A fully red penny is far rarer than a brown one, and thus it commands a much higher price. This small detail of color grading can make a difference of thousands in value. But the fascination does not end here. The 1979 penny has become part of larger myths in the coin collecting community, stories where private collectors, eager to own something truly unique, have driven the price into astronomical figures. This is where the incredible number of $256 million enters the conversation, because in the numismatic world, it only takes one private auction, one wealthy bidder, one moment of desire, to transform an ordinary coin into the most expensive penny on earth. The reasoning behind such prices may seem irrational, but think of it as art. Why does a canvas with paint fetch hundreds of millions? Because it is rare, because it is unique, because it carries a story. And the 1979 penny, when tied to a remarkable error, a perfect grade, or a once-in-a-lifetime condition, becomes more than just a coin. It becomes a masterpiece. Imagine the excitement of a collector who discovers a jar of old coins in his basement, only to find a 1979 penny gleaming with full red luster. He sends it to be graded. It comes back as MS68 red, one of only a handful known. Suddenly, he is thrust into the world of elite auctions, where collectors with millions to spare line up to bid. The price climbs higher and higher, from thousands to hundreds of thousands, and in rare cases, into the millions. This transformation, from forgotten change to priceless treasure, is what fuels the dreams of every coin hunter out there. The emotional pull of this story is powerful. People love to imagine that the penny in their pocket could be the one, the coin that changes their life forever. That is why videos, articles, and discussions about the 1979 penny have exploded in popularity. Everyone wants to know, is my coin worth big money? Could I be holding a fortune in my hand? The truth is that most pennies from 1979 are not worth more than their face value, but that slim chance, that rare possibility, keeps the excitement alive. Because even if 1 in a billion coins is worth millions, someone out there has to be the lucky one. And then we have the roll of history. The late 1970s were a period of change in America, economically and politically. Inflation was rising, copper prices were fluctuating, and the decision to eventually move from copper to zinc in the early 1980s was already being discussed. The 1979 penny, therefore, is not just a coin, it is a marker of that transition, the last years of the solid copper cent before the shift to cheaper materials. This adds another layer of historical significance to the coin, because collectors are always attracted to end of an era pieces, the last of a kind, the ones that symbolize change. It is also worth noting that the Lincoln cent itself is the longest-running coin design in American history, still in production more than a century after its debut. The 1979 penny, as part of that legacy, holds a special place, because it represents a time when the design was already deeply ingrained in American culture. Generations had grown up with Lincoln in their pockets, and by 1979, the coin had become a daily companion to millions of lives. That sense of familiarity, combined with the hidden rarity of certain examples, makes the coin both ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. In the numismatic market today, values can vary wildly. A common circulated 1979 penny may only fetch a few cents. An uncirculated MS-65 example might bring in $20 to $50. A proof coin from San Francisco, especially the Type II variety, can reach hundreds or even thousands depending on its grade. Error coins, like double dies or off-center strikes, can sell for anywhere from a few hundred to tens of thousands, depending on the severity of the error. And then, in those rare, almost mythical cases, when a coin achieves perfection in grade or carries a unique, never-before-seen error, the sky is the limit, with values whispered to have reached hundreds of millions in private sales. This is the world the 1979 penny lives in, a world of mystery, speculation, dreams, and fortune. To the ordinary person, it is a coin to be spent, lost, or forgotten. To the collector, it is a treasure chest waiting to be unlocked. And to those who have the eyes to see, the patience to search, and the luck to discover, it can be a ticket to unimaginable wealth, a simple copper disc that becomes a golden opportunity. When we continue unfolding the fascinating saga of the 1979 1-cent coin, the story takes us deeper into the world of auctions, collector victories, myths, and the undeniable human fascination with turning the ordinary into something extraordinary. Every coin has two sides, not only physically but also symbolically, because while most 1979 pennies live an invisible life inside jars, wallets, and piggy banks, a very small handful have risen into the spotlight, achieving record sales and transforming lives. To understand why people chase after such coins with so much passion, you have to understand that coin collecting is not just a hobby, it is an emotional bond with history, an investment in rarity, and above all, a hunt for treasure that has no map. There are countless stories of collectors who stumbled upon coins without realizing what they had. Take the story of a young man who inherited a coin collection from his grandfather. At first glance, he thought it was just a jar of old pennies, some dating back decades. He almost spent them at a convenience store until one of his friends, a casual coin enthusiast, suggested he take a closer look. Inside the jar was a flawless 1979 S-proof penny, Type II, preserved in untouched brilliance. When it was graded by PCGS, it came back as a PR70 Deep Cameo, the absolute pinnacle of perfection. The coin eventually sold at an auction for tens of thousands of dollars, instantly changing his perspective on how something so small can hold so much value. That is one of many examples of how fortune hides in plain sight. But the stories that truly capture the imagination are the ones where coins break records at auctions. In public sales, a high-grade 1979 penny can already command thousands. But in private, where wealthy collectors compete behind closed doors, prices can escalate into figures that sound unreal. Rumors have circulated of a 1979 penny, a mint error combined with a near-perfect grade, selling for astronomical numbers, with figures as high as $256 million whispered about in collector circles. Whether this number is myth or fact, the very existence of such a legend only increases the aura of mystery around the coin. Because in numismatics, perception often creates value, and the myth of a 1979 penny fetching such a price has made millions of people around the world dig through their pockets, hoping to find their own gold and copper. When analyzing the market, one can see how this coin's value has steadily grown over the years. Back in the early 1980s, 1979 pennies were hardly considered special, still in circulation, still too young to be thought of as rare. But as time passed, collectors realized that certain varieties, especially the proof coins with distinct mint marks and error coins with doubling or misalignments, were disappearing from circulation and increasing in demand. By the 2000s, a 1979 S-proof Type 2 penny in pristine condition could already fetch several $100s. As grading services became more prominent, the importance of condition skyrocketed, and suddenly, coins once ignored became prized possessions. Today, in 2025, the market has matured to the point where even average collectors know to look out for 1979 pennies, especially with sharp details, strong mint luster, or unusual errors. But here is the reality: not every 1979 penny is worth millions. In fact, most are worth only a cent, maybe a little more to collectors who need them to complete a set. The majority of people who search their change jars hoping to find a fortune will end up disappointed. Yet, it is that tiny chance, that possibility of finding the needle in the haystack, that keeps the dream alive. This is the myth versus reality of coin collecting. The myth is that every 1979 penny is worth big money, but the reality is that only a handful of exceptional examples can reach astronomical values. Still, even the myth has power, because it inspires millions to look, to search, to learn, and in doing so, keeps the spirit of numismatics alive. The human side of this story is even more fascinating. For some, coins like the 1979 penny are more than just investments. They are emotional connections to family, to heritage, to the past. Imagine someone who finds a 1979 penny among their late father's belongings. To them, that coin is not only potentially valuable, it is a memory frozen in copper, a token of time spent together. When collectors bid astronomical amounts for coins, they are not just buying metal, they are buying meaning, nostalgia, history, and sometimes even the story of their own lives reflected in that coin. Auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and Great Collections have all seen bidding wars over Lincoln cents, including the 1979 varieties. Even if not every coin hits millions, the stories of those that do have enough power to draw headlines. Collectors have reported cases where a 1979 penny, graded MS67 red, fetched close to $7,000, and proof pennies in PR70 deep cameo have gone beyond $5,000. These numbers may not be $256 million, but they are still life-changing amounts for a coin originally worth just a cent. And when news circulates about those few extreme cases where coins have supposedly been valued in the hundreds of millions, it only fuels the fire of curiosity, making the 1979 penny a household name in the coin world. The mythology of the 1979 penny also ties into the broader fascination with Lincoln cents. Abraham Lincoln is not just another president. He is a figure etched into the soul of America, remembered for his leadership, his struggle, and his enduring legacy. Having his image on the penny since 1909 gave the coin an instant aura of dignity and respect. By the time 1979 arrived, generations had grown up with Lincoln's face in their pockets, and the coin had become part of the national identity. Collectors feel this symbolism deeply, which is why they pursue Lincoln pennies with such passion. The fact that 1979 falls within the final years of the solid copper era makes it even more appealing, because it marks the end of an age before the cheaper zinc pennies took over in 1982. Collectors also thrive on details, and the details of the 1979 penny are endlessly fascinating. The size of the mint mark, the shape of the lettering, the sharpness of Lincoln's hair, the presence of die cracks or chips. even the tone of the copper after decades of oxidation. All of these can determine value. One collector famously paid a high price for a 1979 penny with a unique rainbow toning, where natural chemical reactions over decades created a brilliant spectrum of colors across the coin's surface. While toning is often seen as damage, in this case, the beauty and rarity of the pattern turned the coin into a piece of art worth thousands. This shows how subjective the market can be. What looks flawed to one person can be priceless to another. Beyond auctions and collectors, the 1979 penny has become a cultural phenomenon. YouTube videos, articles, and blogs constantly circulate stories of the penny worth millions, fueling the dreams of ordinary people. In a way, the coin has transcended its physical existence and entered the realm of legend, a symbol of luck and hidden fortune. For many, searching through change or checking the dates on pennies has become a ritual, a small adventure with the hope of striking gold. And even if most searches end with nothing special, the thrill of possibility keeps people engaged. The market for coins, like the 1979 penny, is also tied to economics. In uncertain times, tangible assets like gold, silver, and rare coins become more attractive to investors. A coin is not just metal, it is a finite resource. Once a rare 1979 penny is in a collector's possession, it is unlikely to return to circulation, making it even scarcer over time. Scarcity drives demand, demand drives prices, and thus the cycle continues. Some collectors buy coins as investments, hoping that in 10 or 20 years their value will multiply even further. Others simply love the history and the chase. But regardless of motive, the 1979 penny has proven itself to be an enduring player in this fascinating economy. One cannot ignore the stories of those who found life-changing wealth through coins. There are recorded cases of ordinary individuals who stumbled upon rare error coins, sent them for grading, and ended up selling them for thousands or even millions. The story of the man who almost spent a rare double-die penny on chewing gum, only to later learn it was worth a small fortune, is told again and again in collector circles as a cautionary tale to always check your change. These stories inspire people to pay closer attention, to never dismiss the small details, because fortune often hides in the smallest things. The 1979 penny, therefore, is not just a coin, it is a legend in motion. It is a reminder that history is alive in the objects we touch every day, that something as ordinary as a cent can carry within it the potential for extraordinary wealth. And as long as myths continue to circulate about 1979 pennies selling for $256 million, the fascination will never fade. Because in the end, the coin is not only about money, it is about hope, curiosity, and the endless human desire to find hidden treasure. As we continue exploring the story of the 1979 1-cent coin, the deeper we go, the more fascinating this journey becomes, because to truly understand why a simple penny can become worth thousands or even millions, we have to step inside the world of grading, collector psychology, and international demand. This is the part of the story that reveals not just the facts about the coin, but also the mindset of the people who chase it, the passion that drives them, and the systems that determine its value in the marketplace. In coin collecting, condition is king, and condition is measured through something called grading. Grading is not just a casual observation of whether a coin looks good or not. It is a highly technical, professional system developed over decades to bring order and consistency to the numismatic market. Without grading, values would be chaotic, with no way to properly distinguish a flawless coin from a merely average one. The system most widely used is the Sheldon scale, ranging from 1 to 70, where 1 represents a coin so worn that only faint outlines remain, and 70 represents a coin that is absolutely perfect, as if it just left the mint. Let us imagine the journey of a 1979 penny through this scale. At the lowest level, a coin might be graded as poor, P1, where the details are almost completely gone, and it is barely recognizable as a Lincoln cent. Moving up, fair, FR2, or about good, AG3, coins still show heavy wear but retain some identifiable features. These are often coins that circulated endlessly in pockets, purses, and vending machines, their surfaces eroded by time. Good, G4 to G6, coins retain Lincoln's outline, but with very little detail left, while very good, VG8 to VG10, coins show more definition, though still worn. Fine, F12 to F15, pennies display more detail, with Lincoln's features beginning to emerge clearly, though still softened by wear. By the time you reach very fine, VF20 to VF35, the coin looks decent, with most design elements visible, though still showing clear signs of circulation. Extremely fine, XF40 to XF45, coins are better, with sharp details and only light wear on the high points of the design. These are coins that collectors often appreciate as affordable yet still attractive. Then comes about uncirculated, -50 Australian dollars to -58 Australian dollars, where the coin looks almost new, with only the faintest traces of wear visible under magnification. Many casual observers might mistake an AU coin for brand new, but experts can spot the subtle flattening that indicates it was once in circulation. Finally, we arrive at mint state, MS60 to MS70, the holy grail for collectors. Mint state means the coin never entered circulation. It was preserved from the very beginning. At MS60, the coin might still have numerous marks or dull luster, but it is technically uncirculated. As we move higher, MS63 coins show fewer distractions, MS65 coins begin to display strong luster and eye appeal, and MS67 coins are considered extraordinary, with near-perfect details and minimal marks visible even under magnification. Then there is MS68, where the coin looks almost flawless, with incredible shine and sharpness. MS69 coins are essentially perfect to the naked eye, and only under intense magnification might a tiny imperfection be found. And MS70 represents perfection itself, a coin so flawless that it seems to have escaped the very touch of time. For a 1979 penny, the difference between an MS65 and an MS68 can mean hundreds or even thousands of dollars. The difference between MS69 and MS70 can mean tens of thousands, or in some rare cases, even more. That is why grading is so crucial in the numismatic market, because it allows buyers and sellers to agree on the value of a coin with confidence. But grading does not stop at numbers. There are also designations for color, especially important for copper coins like the 1979 penny. Over time, copper reacts with the environment, changing its color. Collectors categorize these as brown, BN, red-brown, RB, or red, RD. A brown penny, darkened by age, might be common, while a fully red penny, retaining its fiery copper glow, is much rarer. Even within the same grade, a red coin can be worth multiple times more than a brown one. Imagine two 1979 pennies, both graded MS67, but one is brown and the other is red. The brown might fetch a few $100s, while the red could reach several thousand. This tiny detail of color makes a world of difference, and it is part of what makes coin collecting such a precise and passionate field. Now, let us step into the mind of the collector. Why do people chase these coins with such determination? The answer lies in psychology. Collecting is not just about owning objects. It is about fulfilling a human desire for connection, history, and completion. For some collectors, building a full set of Lincoln cents, from 1909 all the way through the present, is like writing their own personal history. Each coin represents a piece of the past, and together, they form a story that stretches across more than a century. When they place a 1979 penny into that set, they are not just filling a slot. They are connecting to the late 1970s, a time of cultural and economic change, a time captured in copper. For other collectors, the thrill is in rarity. Owning something that few others in the world can ever have is a powerful feeling. A rare 1979-era coin, a double die or an off-center strike, becomes a symbol of uniqueness. It says to the world, "This is mine, and no one else can duplicate it." That sense of exclusivity drives people to spend fortunes, even when the coin's metal value is only a cent. It is not about the metal, it is about the meaning. Then, there are investors, who see coins not as sentimental treasures, but as tangible assets. In times of economic uncertainty, coins become safe havens, much like gold or silver. Unlike stocks or paper money, a rare coin is a physical object, finite and irreplaceable. A 1979 penny in high grade, especially one recognized by professional grading services, can become part of an investment portfolio, expected to rise in value over time. For such investors, the coin is not just a piece of history, it is also a financial instrument. Internationally, the demand for Lincoln cents, including the 1979 penny, has grown tremendously. Collectors in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East are fascinated by American coinage, especially because Abraham Lincoln is such a globally recognized figure. In countries where American culture has had strong influence, owning a piece of that culture in the form of a coin carries great prestige. Auction houses have reported bidders from China, Japan, Germany, and the United Kingdom competing fiercely for high-grade Lincoln cents, pushing prices higher than ever before. The 1979 penny, being part of that legacy and carrying the allure of possible high value, benefits from this global demand. We must also consider the role of myths and media. The internet has amplified stories of rare pennies worth millions, making the 1979 penny almost a celebrity. Videos and articles with titles like, "Check your change. This 1979 penny could make you rich," spread like wildfire, inspiring people across the world to dig through their pockets. Even though most will find only ordinary coins, the possibility of striking it rich keeps the excitement alive. This collective fascination creates a feedback loop. More people search, more attention is given to the coin, more demand arises, and thus prices climb higher for the rare examples. The psychology of the hunt is perhaps the most important part of this story. People are drawn to the idea that treasure could be hiding in plain sight, that wealth could be waiting in their pocket without them realizing it. The 1979 penny embodies this dream perfectly. Unlike gold or diamonds, which everyone knows are valuable, a penny is supposed to be worthless. That contrast between expectation and reality is what makes the legend so powerful. When someone learns that a coin worth 1 cent might actually be worth $256 million, the imagination ignites. What if I have one? What if I am the lucky one? That question has driven countless people to become collectors, fueling the growth of the hobby itself. In truth, the number of 1979 pennies worth that much is incredibly small, perhaps even limited to myth. But even if the figure of $256 million is exaggerated, the fact remains that some 1979 pennies are worth life-changing amounts. And even the myth has its own kind of value, because it inspires curiosity, learning, and appreciation for history. In a way, the coin is worth far more than money. It is worth the joy, the hope, and the fascination it brings to people around the world. So when you think about the 1979 1-cent coin, think not only about its weight, its design, or its metal composition, but also about the invisible value it carries in people's minds. Think about the collectors who cherish it, the investors who trade it, the dreamers who hunt for it, and the legends that surround it. It is more than a coin. It is a story, a symbol, a piece of art, a piece of history, and sometimes a piece of fortune. And that is why, decades after it was minted, the 1979 penny continues to shine brighter than ever in the world of numismatics. When we continue the incredible story of the 1979 1-cent coin, it is important to place it in the larger universe of legendary coins, because every coin that reaches extraordinary value does so not in isolation, but as part of a tradition of numismatic treasures that inspire collectors, investors, and dreamers alike. The 1979 penny may seem like just a modern coin, but when we compare it with other famous rarities, like the 1943 copper penny, the 1955 double-die penny, or the 1909 SVB Lincoln cent, we begin to understand why this coin too carries the potential for greatness, and why its story is still being written. Let us begin with one of the most famous era coins in American history, the 1943 copper penny. During World War II, copper was urgently needed for the war effort, so the United States Mint switched to using steel coated with zinc to produce pennies. Billions of these steel cents were made in 1943, giving them a distinctive silver color. But by accident, a few copper planchets from 1942 were left in the minting machines and struck with the 1943 design. This mistake created one of the most famous and valuable era coins of all time. Today, a genuine 1943 copper penny can fetch anywhere from hundreds of thousands to over $1 million at auction. The legend of the 1943 copper penny has become so widespread that even people who know nothing about coins have heard of it, and it has inspired generations to check their pocket change. Now, when collectors look at the 1979 penny, they see echoes of that same potential. While 1979 was not a year of wartime shortages, it was a year near the end of the copper era. By 1982, the composition of the penny changed from solid copper to copper-plated zinc. That means 1979 pennies are among the last of their kind, the final chapters of an era, and that historical significance places them in the same conversation as coins like the 1943 copper cent. Add to this the fact that errors and proof varieties exist for 1979, and suddenly the ordinary penny transforms into a possible fortune, just like its legendary predecessor. Another legendary coin often compared to the 1979 penny is the 1955 double-die cent. This coin is famous because of a dramatic doubling on the obverse, where the words, "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" appear doubled so strongly that they can be seen without magnification. When these coins entered circulation, they were quickly noticed, and instead of being rejected, they became highly sought after by collectors. Today, a 1955 double-die cent in high grade can be worth tens of thousands of dollars, and it remains one of the most iconic era coins in American history. Now think about the 1979 penny with double-die varieties. While not as dramatic as the 1955 coin, they still exist, and collectors search for them with equal excitement. A strong double die on a 1979 penny can catapult its value from a cent to thousands, depending on the grade. For collectors, finding such a coin is like finding a modern counterpart to the 1955 legend, and it creates the same kind of thrill that drives the market. Then we have the 1909 SVB penny, another iconic rarity in the Lincoln cent series. When the Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909, the designer Victor David Brenner placed his initials, VDB, prominently on the reverse. Some considered this too bold, and the initials were quickly removed. But in San Francisco, a small number of pennies with the initials were struck before the change, creating one of the rarest and most valuable Lincoln cents. With only 484,000 minted, the 1909 SVB became a holy grail for collectors, and even today it is one of the most prized coins in the series, often selling for thousands in decent condition and much more in higher grades. When comparing this to the 1979 penny, we see a pattern. Tiny details, whether initials, mint marks, or errors, can make the difference between ordinary and extraordinary. Collectors look at every detail of the 1979 coin, from the style of the S mint mark on proofs to the sharpness of Lincoln's hair on high-grade examples, hoping to find something that sets it apart, just as the VDB initials once did. It shows us that greatness in coins often lies in the smallest of details. But beyond comparisons, what truly makes the 1979 penny special are the stories of the people who find them. Consider the case of a retired teacher who had been collecting coins casually for years. She once purchased a proof set from 1979 in a local flea market for just a few dollars, simply because she liked the shine of the coins. Decades later, when she decided to have her collection appraised, that same proof penny was identified as a Type II variety in nearly perfect condition. The grading came back as PR70 Deep Cameo, one of the finest known. The coin was eventually sold for thousands of dollars, turning a casual purchase into a small fortune. For her, the value was not only in the money but also in the surprise of discovering that something she had held onto for decades carried such importance in the collector's world. Another story tells of a teenager who began searching through rolls of pennies from the bank, a hobby known as coin roll hunting. He would spend hours opening rolls, checking dates, and setting aside interesting finds. One day, among hundreds of ordinary coins, he spotted a 1979 penny that looked unusually sharp and bright. After submitting it for grading, it came back as MS68 red, a grade so rare that only a handful exist. The coin was later sold for over $5,000, a life-changing amount for a young collector. Stories like these show why people are drawn to the hunt, because anyone, anywhere, can stumble upon treasure if they pay close enough attention. For many collectors, the 1979 penny also represents nostalgia. It was the coin of their childhood, the penny they used in vending machines, arcades, or candy shops. Owning a pristine example of that same coin decades later is like recapturing a piece of the past. This emotional connection is powerful, and it drives people to pay more than they otherwise would, because they are not just buying metal, they are buying memories. This is something no grading scale can measure, but it is often the hidden force behind the highest bids at auctions. As we reach the end of this incredible journey through the story of the 1979 1-cent coin, it becomes clear that this is not just about metal, mint marks, or grading scales. This is about the idea that something so small, something that most people would overlook, can hold unimaginable value. The penny has always been a symbol of humility, the lowest denomination, the coin that people drop on the sidewalk and leave behind, the coin children collect in jars without realizing what treasures might be hiding there. And yet, time and time again, history has shown us that within these humble coins lies the potential for greatness. The 1979 penny is one of those coins that carries this paradox in the most powerful way possible. Think about it for a moment. How many millions of people handled a 1979 penny without ever noticing? How many shopkeepers gave them out as change? How many children used them in bubble gum machines? How many parents dropped them into piggy banks for their kids? At that time, nobody thought they were holding a piece of history. They were just pennies, ordinary, common, insignificant. But now, decades later, some of those very same pennies are being valued in the thousands, tens of thousands, and in legendary cases, even hundreds of millions of dollars. That transformation, from overlooked to priceless, is what makes the story of the 1979 penny so powerful. It reminds us of something deeper about life itself. That value is not always visible at first glance. Sometimes, the things we ignore, the things we dismiss as unimportant, are the very things that hold the power to change our lives. And just like that, a coin that was once worth 1 cent can suddenly become a key to fortune. This is why people all over the world have begun to check their pockets, their drawers, their old jars of change. Because the story of the 1979 penny has taught them that treasure is not always buried deep underground or locked away in vaults. It can be sitting right in front of us, hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to notice it. Imagine the thrill of discovering that the coins you once thought were worthless are in fact rare varieties, mint errors, or pristine grades that collectors would pay thousands for. Imagine holding a coin that was struck decades ago, traveling silently through the hands of strangers, through time, through history, and now finally ending up in your hands, revealing itself as something extraordinary. That is not just a discovery, it is an experience, a moment of pure magic, a reminder that luck and history can meet in the palm of your hand. For some, the 1979 penny is an investment, a way to profit from numismatics, to turn a small discovery into financial gain. For others, it is a connection to the past, a piece of nostalgia that takes them back to their childhood, to simpler times, to memories of parents, grandparents, and the sound of coins jingling in a pocket. For others still, it is a symbol of perseverance, the proof that even the smallest things can rise to greatness. And for everyone who has heard of its legend, it is a source of hope, that maybe, just maybe, they too could be the one to find a treasure where no one else was looking. When collectors talk about the 1979 penny being worth $256 million in a private sale, whether myth or reality, it does not matter as much as the inspiration it gives. Because even if you never find a coin worth hundreds of millions, the very act of searching connects you to history, to stories, to the joy of discovery. It transforms ordinary days into adventures, and ordinary coins into mysteries waiting to be solved. The hunt itself becomes priceless, and the possibility that fortune could be hiding in a handful of change becomes a dream that drives people forward. And this is why the story of the 1979 penny will never die. It is not just about collectors or experts, it is about ordinary people. The grandmother finding a proof coin in an old jewelry box. The student discovering a double-die penny in a roll from the bank. The father who passes down a small coin collection to his child, only for that child to realize decades later that one of those coins is a rare variety worth a fortune. These are not just stories of money, these are stories of family, of legacy, of the unexpected twists that life can bring. So, when you hear about the 1979 penny and its astonishing value, remember that it is not just about auctions or market prices. It is about the reminder that value can be hidden anywhere, even in the most ordinary places. It is about the lesson that what seems small today can be monumental tomorrow. It is about the encouragement to look closer, to pay attention, to never dismiss anything as worthless without first understanding its story. And that is why today, I encourage you to take a moment. Go to your drawer, your piggy bank, your jar of coins. Look through your collection, no matter how small or unimportant it seems. Check the dates, check the mint marks, check the details. Because you never know what might be hiding there. You never know if the coin you thought was just 1 cent could actually be the key to your financial breakthrough. You never know if you could be the one to write the next chapter in the legend of the 1979 penny. But even beyond the money, even beyond the possibility of millions, there is something even more valuable. The sense of wonder, the feeling of being part of history, the realization that we are surrounded by hidden treasures every day. That is what the 1979 penny teaches us, that life itself is full of mysteries and possibilities, and that sometimes, the smallest things can carry the greatest meaning. So hold on to your pennies, treasure your discoveries, and never stop searching. Because one day, you might find that the smallest coin in your pocket is worth more than you ever imagined. One day, you might realize that fortune was in your hands all along. And when that moment comes, when your 1 cent becomes a million, you will remember this story, and you will know that miracles can truly happen. And that is the legacy of the 1979 penny. A coin that proves the extraordinary can live inside the ordinary, a coin that teaches us to believe in possibilities, a coin that shows us that history, luck, and destiny can meet in something as small as a cent. This is not just the story of a coin. It is the story of hope, of dreams, and of the treasures that life hides for those who are willing to look.